Have you ever wondered what a quiet morning felt like when the world was colder, slower, and simpler? When all that existed was the faint warmth of a fire, the soft breathing of a few humans, and the stillness of ice outside. If you close your eyes for a moment, you might even feel that calm. The sound of the fire, the steady air, the quiet rhythm of another world long before ours. Tonight, we'll step gently into that morning, not to relive it, but to rest inside its silence. You're safe here. There's nothing you need to do. No tasks, no rushing thoughts. Just my voice, and this slow unfolding of time. Let yourself feel the weight of your blanket, the warmth of your space, all of it given by Allah through His mercy. The same mercy that once allowed warmth to exist even in an Ice Age shelter. It's okay to slow down. You're allowed to breathe and rest. This story won't demand your focus. It will simply accompany you. Take a slow breath in and let it out. This is your small ritual of calm. As the fire in this story burns quietly, so too will your thoughts begin to cool down. Each breath is a reminder that you are safe in this moment. Every word that follows is meant to make you softer, slower, and easier with the idea of resting. No rush, no deadlines, just a quiet moment shared with ancient silence. Now, let's begin, softly, with a very ordinary morning in an Ice Age shelter. Nothing dramatic happens. No roaring beasts, no discoveries, no battles. Just the small, real rhythm of people waking up slowly, under hides and smoke and pale light. This is not a story about heroes. It's a story about stillness, and how ordinary survival was both quiet and profound. Before we wander deeper, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? What time is it there? Somewhere far across the world, your night is different, but still touched by the same calm. If you enjoy these peaceful journeys through forgotten moments, you can gently press like, subscribe, or leave a quiet comment. It helps more calm souls find this space of rest, and maybe drift away with us next time. Imagine it now. The first light doesn't pour in. It seeps through cracks and seams. A cold, silver light that doesn't warm anything, but helps shapes become visible. The rough curve of a wall, the outline of a sleeping body, the shimmer of frost on stone. The air inside the shelter smells faintly of smoke and dry hides, and everything feels heavy with the kind of quiet that only early morning brings. The fire isn't big. It's not dramatic. It's small and loyal, a slow cluster of red coals breathing in the dark. Someone, half awake, reaches out to move a stick closer. Sparks bloom, fade, and the sound that follows is soft, like sand shifting. That gentle crackle is the oldest lullaby humanity has ever known. Warmth by Allah's will, through small, careful hands. The people inside don't wake to alarms. They wake when the air feels lighter, or when the warmth fades from their side. Time isn't measured by numbers, it's felt. Felt in hunger, in chill, in the rhythm of daylight filtering in. One person opens their eyes and stays still, conserving warmth under the heavy fur. Another adjusts the hides, tucking them close, sealing the cold outside. If you listen closely, you might hear a deep exhale, the sound of someone turning in their sleep, the faint rustle of animal skin shifting. Nothing more. The fire breathes, the humans breathe, and for a long time, that's all that happens. This is what peace looked like in a world made of ice. Not comfort, exactly, but calm, deliberate survival. Outside, the wind moves slow lines of snow across open ground. There are no buildings, no cities, only wide, quiet land. The shelter feels small by comparison, but inside it, there is warmth. By Allah's mercy, even a fragile fire can protect a life. A shelter built with patience, stone by stone, hide by hide, stands firm against the cold that presses endlessly beyond it. If your mind drifts, that's fine. You can come back to the sound of this imagined fire. Back to the faint orange glow on rough stone. Back to the warmth that asks for nothing but quiet. In every age, peace has always come from small, ordinary acts, tending fire, sharing space, breathing together. As the first person sits up, there's no rush. They rub their hands together slowly, watching the fire as if it were alive. Not because it is, but because through it, Allah grants warmth and light. The others are still sleeping. There's a sense of patience, a waiting that feels like a prayer of action, not words. No one speaks. The shelter is still half asleep. The morning brings tasks, but none are urgent. Maybe the fire needs more wood. Maybe someone will step out to check the air. These are gentle thoughts, slow-moving like the smoke that drifts lazily toward the roof. In this world, rushing doesn't make sense. There's nowhere to go quickly, nothing that rewards speed. Every movement matters. Each piece of hide placed, each ember turned, each small breath that warms the air. This is the rhythm of life stripped of noise. A rhythm we've forgotten in our bright, restless cities. But here, long ago, it was natural. A day didn't begin. It simply continued, the same way the fire continued, glowing quietly, never shouting. Take another breath with them. Feel the simplicity of it. No ambition, no comparison, no hurry. Just being alive, through the will of Allah, surrounded by creation that obeys His balance. Fire warming, ice resting, humans adapting. This is the calm we crave without realizing it. As the first sounds of movement grow, no one breaks the peace. There's a respect for silence that comes from necessity. Voices stay low. Every sound feels important. The scrape of stone tools. The faint murmur of someone stirring the coals. Even those sounds seem to settle back into stillness once they're done. And now, a soft reminder, you're doing well. You're not meant to focus hard. Just let the rhythm of this slow life guide your breathing. These are ordinary people in extraordinary cold, finding peace not in excitement, but in the comfort of routine. The same kind of peace you can find here, right now, by listening. A child might open their eyes next, blinking in the half-light. They don't speak. They just look toward the fire, drawn to its soft glow. The elder beside them adjusts the hide, pulling it close around both of them. Protection, care, patience, all passed quietly, without a word. The world outside is frozen, yes, but inside, there's a fragile warmth. And through that warmth, life continues. No great stories are told today. No discoveries are made. But that's the beauty of it. An ordinary morning, ordinary people, doing small things carefully, and surviving. If your eyelids are heavy now, you can rest them. The story will stay soft for you. The fire will keep burning. The cold will stay outside. Everything that matters is already here. Stillness, warmth, and the gentle knowledge that life can be peaceful without needing to be grand. So, as the light grows stronger but never bright, the people of the Ice Age shelter settle into the slow beginning of another day. Nothing changes quickly here. The world outside may be wide and cold, but inside this small space, time is kind. It stretches, it lingers, and it whispers that sometimes an ordinary morning is enough. Have you ever tried to imagine a home that is not meant to impress anyone, only to keep the cold out and the warmth in, and how quietly your body would relax once you realize the shelter is holding steady? The shelter is low, almost humble, as if it is trying not to argue with the wind. Its shape is practical, rounded where it needs to be, tightened at the edges, built to reduce gaps where cold air could sneak in and steal heat that Allah allows to reach them through simple means. If it is a cave, it is chosen carefully, not too deep to trap smoke, not too open to invite storms. If it is built from scratch, it is placed where the ground stays firm, where snow does not drift too high, and where the entrance can be protected from the sharpest direction of the wind. From the outside, it might look like a mound, a low silhouette against pale land. Stones are stacked with patient hands, and wooden ribs are angled like bent elbows, then covered with hide stretched tight, then weighted down so the whole thing stays calm when weather turns impatient. Inside, the ceiling feels close, close enough that you can almost sense heat collecting there. Smoke travels upward in a slow, thin stream, guided toward an opening that is never perfect, only good enough. Nothing in this shelter is permanent, because only Allah is eternal. But for this season, for this stretch of cold, It holds. The floor is not bare stone if they can help it. A layer of dry grass, then a layer of hide, then another layer, makes a simple bed that keeps bodies from losing too much warmth into the earth. It is not soft like modern bedding, but it is softer than cold ground, and that small difference matters. The entrance is narrower than you might expect. A wide opening wastes warmth. A narrow one is easier to block. Sometimes a hanging hide serves as a door, heavy and stiff, moving slightly when someone passes, then settling back into place like a slow curtain that prefers silence. Near the entrance, the air feels cooler, and that is where damp things are kept, away from the warm center. Outside snow on boots or hides melts, then dries slowly. It is a simple system, not written down, learned by living through many mornings, and by noticing what keeps the shelter from becoming unpleasant. The center belongs to the fire, and the fire is treated like an important responsibility, not a toy. Stones circle it to keep embers from rolling. Ash collects in a soft grey ring. A few pieces of dry wood wait nearby. Warmth arrives by Allah's permission through these careful arrangements, and through attention that never becomes careless. If your thoughts begin to drift, you can let them drift gently, and then return to one steady image. The low roof. The quiet glow. The feeling of being enclosed and protected, while the cold world stays outside, doing its cold work far away. Along the walls, tools rest where hands can find them without searching. A stone scraper. A sharp flake set aside for cutting. A bone needle, small and easy to lose, kept in a consistent spot. Organization here is not neatness for its own sake. It is calm preparation, because losing a tool costs time, and time costs warmth. You might notice how the shelter carries layers of history in its surfaces. Soot stains the ceiling darker near the smoke path. The floor shows compressed patches where people sleep again and again. A few stones are polished by touch, not intentionally, but because hands lean there, bodies brace there, lives repeat there. Storage is simple and quiet. Dried meat hangs where smoke can help preserve it. Bundles of plant fibers and tinder sit in a dry nook. Nothing is excessive, and nothing is collected for display. Everything is meant to be used, and used carefully, because replacement is never guaranteed. There is also a gentle awareness of cleanliness, not in a modern way, but in a practical one. Waste is kept away. Food scraps are managed. Bedding is aired when weather allows. A shelter that becomes dirty becomes unhealthy, and so simple habits form, repeated without complaint, because survival prefers routine. Sometimes a small windbreak is built outside the entrance, a partial wall of stones that forces gusts to slow down before they reach the door hide. It is the kind of improvement you barely notice until it is missing. These people learn by experience, and then they keep what works, quietly, without celebration. Listen for the sound the shelter makes when the wind touches it. A faint flap of hide. A soft knock of a loose twig. A low hiss as air tries to push in and fails. It is not a loud place. It is a place that absorbs sound, the way thick cloth absorbs light. Another gentle reminder, you do not need to stay alert. You can follow the description loosely, like following the steady crackle of a fire. If you miss a detail, nothing is lost, because this shelter is built from repeating patterns, and repetition is soothing. Now imagine a small moment of maintenance, because shelters are never finished, only tended. Someone presses a palm against a seam where cold air leaks in. They add a strip of hide. They wedge a small stone into a gap. The change is tiny, but the comfort it brings is real, by Allah's permission through these ordinary efforts. In one corner, a sleeping space is slightly raised with extra layers, giving the oldest person a bit more protection from the cold floor. It is not luxury. It is kindness in a practical form. The shelter teaches people to think in terms of warmth and in terms of sharing it. When daylight grows stronger, the shelter does not suddenly brighten. It stays dim, with a soft grey tone, like morning seen through closed eyelids. That dimness is useful. It keeps heat in. It keeps glare out. It allows people to wake slowly, as if the space itself is encouraging them to move without hurry. And as this part of the story settles, the shelter remains what it has always been: a quiet shape against a loud climate, a simple answer to a difficult season. Not perfect, not lasting forever, but steady for today, holding its small warmth in silence, while the world outside continues, cold and wide, and unbothered. Have you ever noticed how the smaller sound, like a quiet crackle of coals, can make your whole body feel calmer, as if the room is warmer just because that gentle rhythm exists? In an Ice Age shelter, the fire is not a dramatic centerpiece, it is a steady necessity, and it stays close to the center of daily life because Allah allows warmth and light to reach people through simple means, and those means must be protected with care. The fire is usually not tall or loud, especially in the morning. It is more like a low bed of coals, dim red under a thin blanket of ash, breathing slowly, holding on to heat as if it is saving it for later. A person who wakes first does not rush toward it. They approach like someone approaching responsibility, because a fire is easy to lose and hard to replace, and losing it means the shelter becomes colder, faster, and every task becomes heavier. To keep it alive, they do small things. They scrape ash aside gently, they expose brighter embers to air, they bring one dry twig closer, and they watch for that soft change when the coals brighten and the crackle returns. It is not only warmth they are guarding, it is time, because making a new fire can take long minutes, sometimes longer, and those minutes might be spent shivering, and shivering is energy leaving the body. If you want, let your breathing match the pace of this slow work, steady in, steady out, because this story is not asking you to stay alert, it is only offering a rhythm you can rest inside. Fuel is chosen carefully. Not every piece of wood is equal. Some burns fast and bright, some burns slow and steady, and the best pieces are saved for when the shelter needs warmth most, like early morning and late night. Tinder is kept dry as a treasure of practicality: thin bark, dry grass, plant fibers, anything that catches easily, because in a cold place, dampness steals the chance of flame before it even begins. Sometimes they carry embers from one place to another, tucked into a bundle of slow-burning material, because it is easier to protect a living coal than to start from nothing, and they understand this without needing to say it out loud. The hearth is shaped with stones, not to decorate, but to control. Stones help keep coals together, keep sparks from rolling into bedding, and create a boundary that tells everyone, even a sleepy child, when not to step. Smoke is managed as gently as the fire itself. Too much smoke fills the shelter and makes eyes sting, so the fire is kept low, and the opening above is used like a quiet path for air to travel. Nothing about this is perfect, and that is part of the realism. A little smoke lingers, a little soot gathers, but the people adapt, shifting where they sit, where they sleep, learning the shelter's airflow like you learn the shape of your own room in the dark. If your thoughts wander, you can come back to one simple image: a small circle of stones, a dim red glow, and a hand moving slowly, tending it with patience. The sound of the fire changes through the morning. When a twig is added, it might snap softly. When air reaches a hidden ember, it might brighten, and these small sounds become the shelter's background, constant enough that silence feels strange without them. Heat moves unevenly, the center is warmer, the edges are cooler, and people position themselves like quiet planets around a small sun, not because the fire is powerful, but because Allah allows benefit through it, and they respect that benefit by staying close. A cooking pot may not always be present, but the fire still matters for food. It can warm stones that are placed near meat, it can help dry damp items, it can prepare a simple broth when they have what they need, and all of it happens slowly. There is also a careful habit of watching, not staring intensely, just noticing, because a fire can weaken silently, and in cold weather, weakness becomes dangerous, so someone glances at it the way you might glance at the sky before stepping outside. Another gentle reminder: you do not need to hold every detail. You can listen like you listen to rain, letting the meaning pass through you while your body settles deeper into rest. Even the ashes have a use. Ash can insulate coals to keep them alive longer. It can help with cleaning. It can be moved aside to reveal what still glows. And in a place where resources are limited, even leftovers become part of the system. When the shelter is calm, the fire becomes calmer too, and that is the feeling to keep, not excitement, only steadiness, a quiet partnership between human attention and a small controlled warmth. As the morning continues, the fire remains, not as an everlasting thing, but as a carefully maintained presence for today, a soft light in a cold world, waiting patiently for the next small stick, the next slow breath, and the next ordinary moment. Have you ever noticed how a room feels calmer when everyone moves slowly, as if speed itself has decided to take a nap, and the only thing that keeps time is the quiet breathing of a fire? In this Ice Age shelter, waking up is not a sudden event. A person shifts under layered hides, testing the air with the smallest movement. They sit up only halfway at first, letting warmth stay close to the body a moment longer. The morning is cold enough to make patience feel sensible. Nobody jumps to their feet. Nobody hurries. There is no reward for fast motion here, only the risk of wasting energy that the body worked hard to keep. The first steps are careful and soft. Feet search for the warmest patches near the hearth, then avoid the places where embers might have rolled during the night. The shelter is dim, so movement becomes a kind of memory. Hands reach to familiar spots, feeling for a tool, a folded hide, a bundle of dry grass. Everything has a place, not for beauty, but because searching burns time, and time burns warmth. One person crouches near the fire and simply watches for a few breaths. Not staring intensely, just noticing. They nudge a stick closer, then wait. That waiting matters. In a cold world, rushing can lead to mistakes, and mistakes can cost comfort that Allah allows through ordinary means like shelter and careful attention. The fire responds slowly, brightening a little, as if agreeing to continue. A stone tool is picked up and turned in the hand, weighed like a familiar thought. The person checks the edge with a thumb, gently, not to show courage, but to confirm sharpness. If it needs work, they do it with calm repetition. Stone against stone makes a dry, steady sound, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet scrape that blends into the background like a soft clock. Another set of hands is busy with mending. A hide has a thin tear along a seam, and the repair is not rushed. A bone needle slides through with patient rhythm. Thread, pull, tighten. Thread, pull, tighten. Each stitch is small, but each one keeps warmth in. Warmth comes by Allah's permission, and these careful repairs are part of how people receive that mercy through practical effort. No one makes a big plan for the day. The shelter does not demand ambition. It only asks for maintenance. Someone shakes a grass mat lightly to loosen frost, then lays it back down flatter. Someone folds a hide to keep it dry near the center, then steps away so it does not block the fire's heat from reaching others. Communication is minimal, almost sleepy. A glance is enough. A small nod means, "I will take care of that." A hand gesture means, "Do not step there." Words are saved, not because people are unfriendly, but because silence is useful. Silence keeps the shelter calm. Calm keeps the body steady, and steadiness helps everyone last through the season. In a corner, supplies are checked without fuss. A bundle of tinder is touched to see if it is still dry. A few sticks are moved closer to the hearth, but not too close. Dryness is protected like a quiet treasure. Even the smallest decision has weight here, because each decision supports another ordinary morning, and ordinary mornings are what survival is made of. If your mind drifts, let it drift slowly, and then come back to one simple idea. Everyone is moving with care. Nothing is urgent. The shelter is a small world where quiet repetition feels safe, and your own breathing can follow that pace without effort. A younger person watches the adults without being told to. Their eyes follow hands, not faces. They learn where tools are kept. They learn which stones are stable to step on. They learn that morning begins with small tasks, not big speeches. They copy the movements in miniature, adjusting a hide, picking up a stick, setting it down again, practicing calm the way you practice writing. Someone stands near the entrance for a moment, feeling the air. They do not fling the door hide open. They lift it just enough to check the color of the light outside, the direction of the wind, the mood of the cold. Then they let it fall back into place. The shelter keeps its warmth. The group keeps its quiet. A bit of ash is swept aside with a flat piece of bone. The floor near the fire is kept orderly, not spotless, but safe. Embers are counted with the eyes. Ash is gathered where it will not spread into bedding. These are small, almost boring motions, and that is the point. Boredom here means stability. Stability means another night passed without trouble. Someone rubs their hands together, then holds them near the coals, turning palms slowly. Heat is accepted with gratitude, knowing it arrives only because Allah allows it. Nobody pretends the fire controls anything on its own. It is a tool, a means, and it must be treated with respect, not worship, not exaggeration, just responsible care. The rhythm of the shelter begins to settle into a pattern. Fix one thing, put it back, check another, sit down, warm up, stand up again. It is almost like a quiet rocking motion, the whole group moving in slow cycles. If you are getting sleepy, this is a good moment to let your eyelids feel heavier, because nothing sudden is coming. Another soft reminder returns like a gentle blanket. You do not need to remember every detail. You can listen loosely, the way you listen to a distant fan or rainfall, letting the sound of slow life guide you toward rest. A tool edge is tested again, then set aside in the same spot. A small pile of usable flakes is gathered and kept together. Even tiny pieces matter. A broken edge might still scrape hide. A dull point might still cut plant fiber. Nothing is praised as magical. It is simply used, and Allah provides benefit through the correct use of ordinary things. A person adjusts where they sit, choosing a place where the heat reaches their knees. They lean against a wall that is dark with soot, polished by years of shoulders resting there. The shelter holds stories in its surfaces, not in words, but in repeated contact. This place has been lived in, and today it will be lived in again, without ceremony. There is a moment when everyone seems to pause at once, not because someone commanded it, but because the shelter itself feels quiet enough to invite stillness. The fire crackles lightly. A hide shifts and settles. A breath deepens. It is a small, shared silence that does not need explanation. In modern life, speed often feels normal. Here, slowness is normal. Slowness is intelligent. Slowness keeps hands steady and thought simple. And simplicity is a kind of comfort. Not an eternal comfort, only for now, for today, but still real, still soothing, still enough to rest your mind for a while. Another gentle anchor returns, like a familiar footstep. The morning remains ordinary. The movements remain small. Nothing is building toward a loud moment. You can relax into that, knowing the story will continue in the same calm direction. As these quiet chores finish and begin again, the shelter feels more awake, but not busier. It is awake in the way a fire is awake, steady and contained. And soon, without any announcement, those slow movements will naturally drift toward the next simple need of the day, the quiet work of preparing something to eat, while the cold waits outside and the warmth stays close by Allah's permission. Have you ever noticed how thinking about a simple, quiet meal can make your body feel heavier, calmer, like you are already settling in, while the soft warmth of a fire keeps everything slow and gentle? Food in an Ice Age shelter does not begin with excitement. It begins with checking what is already there. Someone looks toward the darker corner where dry things are kept, away from damp air. Another person stays near the coals, letting their hands warm first, because cold fingers are clumsy, and clumsy fingers waste effort. Nobody announces, "We are cooking now." It simply starts, the way morning starts, with small movements and familiar routines. The supplies are modest and practical. There may be dried meat from earlier days, hard and dark from smoke. There may be a bundle of roots, slightly wrinkled, still usable. There might be a handful of nuts or seeds saved in a pouch. Nothing is treated as endless. Only Allah is eternal, and resources here are limited, so everything is handled with quiet respect and careful planning. Dried meat is inspected slowly. A strip is lifted, bent, smelled briefly, then set down. If it is too stiff, it can be softened near the heat, not directly in flame, just close enough that warmth returns to it. The person does not chew yet. They prepare first. A sharp flake of stone trims a rough edge. The motion is controlled and calm, like tidying a thread on clothing, because a careless cut could waste food, and waste is a kind of mistake in a cold world. Roots and plants are treated with the same patience. Dirt is brushed away. Any damaged parts are cut off. A root might be sliced into thin pieces so it warms faster, because thicker pieces take longer, and longer cooking needs more fuel. The smell is simple, earthy, and mild, not rich, not perfumed. It is the smell of survival, quiet and plain. If you feel sleepy, you can let that plainness soothe you, like a room without bright colors. The tools are not many, but they are reliable. A flat stone becomes a surface for cutting. A smaller sharp piece becomes a blade. A bone tool might scrape or pry. Everything is clean enough to use, not sterile, but cared for. A quick wipe with dry grass. A glance to confirm there is no grit where it should not be. It is gentle work, repeated often, and repetition makes it smooth. Cooking is usually close to the coals, not above tall flames. Flames are flashy and wasteful. Coals are steady. Someone places thin slices near the heat on a warm stone, turning them once, then leaving them again. The food does not sizzle dramatically. It warms and dries and softens in a quiet way. The fire crackles softly, and that sound becomes part of the meal, like a background rhythm you can breathe along with. Sometimes they use hot stones to warm food more evenly. A stone is placed near the coals until it holds heat, then moved carefully with another tool. The hot stone is set beside the food, or beneath it, letting warmth rise slowly. It is simple physics learned through experience, not written down, just remembered by hands. And any benefit that comes, any warmth, any ease in the body, is allowed by Allah through these ordinary means, through stone, through fire, through careful attention. If the shelter has a container that can hold water, they might warm a small amount near the coals. If not, they still find ways to soften tough food, sometimes by wrapping it and placing it near steady heat. The goal is not luxury. It is digestibility, comfort, and energy. Every method is quiet. Nobody performs. Nobody rushes. A calm meal is part of a calm day. Smoke helps, too. Food held near smoke dries and keeps longer. Even when they are eating now, they are thinking of later, because hunger returns. A strip of meat might be warmed, then returned to a higher spot where smoke can touch it again. Nothing is final. Everything is part of a cycle. And that steady cycle can feel comforting, like a slow rocking motion in the mind. Sharing is done without ceremony. Portions are small, divided with an eye for fairness. The strongest adult may need more. The youngest may need softer pieces. An older person might receive food first, not because of a rule spoken aloud, but because experience has taught the group to protect those who have less resilience against cold. There is no grand speech, only quiet understanding in the way hands pass food from one place to another. Chewing is a slow sound, almost gentle. In a quiet shelter, even eating feels subdued. People chew steadily, not talking much, because the mouth is busy and the warmth of the fire invites silence. You might imagine the simple texture of food, firm meat softened slightly, root slices warmed and mild. It is not a feast. It is enough. And enough is a calm feeling. Water, if they have it nearby, is treated carefully. They may store it where it will not freeze too quickly, and they do not waste it on unnecessary washing. But they still understand cleanliness in a practical way. Hands are wiped. Surfaces are kept from becoming sticky or attracting animals. They know that sickness is dangerous here. Quiet hygiene is another form of calm preparation. A child might receive a small piece and sit close to the warmth, chewing slowly, watching the adults' hands more than their faces. Learning happens in these moments. How to hold food so it does not drop. How to stay near the heat without getting too close. How to wait until the piece is warm enough. Even eating becomes a lesson in patience. If your mind starts to drift, you can return to one simple image, a warm stone beside glowing coals, and a small piece of food being turned once, then left alone. Nothing is urgent. Nothing is sharp. The shelter is moving at a pace that invites sleep, and you can let it carry you. After the first quiet eating, there is a small pause. People do not jump into the next task immediately. They sit. They warm their hands. They let the food settle. In a cold world, digestion is work, and rest supports it. Someone watches the coals, not intensely, just enough to know the fire is stable. Another person adjusts the hide near the entrance to block a thin draft. The meal and the shelter feel connected, both part of staying steady. Leftovers are managed without fuss. A bit of food is set aside in a dry place, away from the damp edge of the shelter. If there is fat, it is saved, because fat is valuable. If there are crumbs or scraps, they are not scattered. The shelter is kept orderly, because disorder invites problems. Again, nothing is treated as magical. Only allegrants benefit, and people do their part by using what they have wisely. Season matters. On some days there is more plant food, on some days more meat, depending on what has been found, what has been stored, what weather has allowed. Today feels like a simple day, not rich, not desperate. That middle ground is soothing. It is the feeling of, we have enough for now, and we will be careful, and we will keep going. Notice the sounds as the meal ends. A small scrape as a tool is set down. A soft rustle as a pouch is tied. The faint crackle of coals as someone shifts a stick. These are small, boring details, and they are meant to be. Boring details are safe details. Safe details let the body relax. Another gentle reminder returns like a familiar blanket. You do not need to hold onto every detail. You can let some words pass by and keep only the steady feeling, the warmth near the fire, the slow pace of hands preparing a quiet meal. When food is finished, the shelter does not become lively. It remains calm. People settle back into their places, and the day continues without a strong change in mood. The fire stays low. The air stays dim. The work will return later, but not right now. This moment is soft, and softness is useful. And as this slow food preparation fades into the background, attention naturally turns outward, not with fear, but with quiet awareness. Someone listens, not for drama, just for the ordinary sounds of the world beyond the shelter, the wind, the snow, the distant movement of animals, while the warmth remains close, by Allah's permission, through simple, careful living. Have you ever noticed how the world outside can feel enormous, yet the simplest thing you can do is listen to it quietly, as if your ears are resting on the edge of the wind? Inside the shelter, someone shifts closer to the entrance, not to leave, not yet, just to measure the day. The hide at the doorway hangs heavy and still, and the person pauses before touching it, because even a small opening can invite cold air to rush in and steal warmth. They place a hand against the hide first, feeling for vibration, for the tiniest movement that suggests wind is pushing from outside. They lift the edge only a little, just enough to create a thin gap. Pale light slips in like water, and with it comes a different kind of silence, the open silence of snowfields and distant hills. It is colder near the gap, and the person breathes through the nose, slow and careful, so the cold does not shock the chest. The sounds outside are not loud. They are scattered and faint, like the world is speaking in whispers. Wind brushes across the ground. Snow grains slide and tick against stone. Somewhere far away, ice shifts with a low, patient groan that is more felt than heard. The listener does not react dramatically. They simply note it, the way you might note rain at night without getting out of bed. If your mind starts to drift, that is fine. You can return to this small moment, a hand lifting the hide, a narrow gap of light, and the steady feeling of listening without needing to do anything. Sometimes the wind is steady, and that steadiness is comforting, because it means the weather is not changing quickly. Sometimes it comes in pulses, a push, a pause, another push, and those pulses suggest a front moving, a shift in the sky. The listener does not name it with modern words. They feel it in their skin and in the way the shelter responds with a soft flap and then stillness again. A few snowflakes might blow into the entrance and melt slowly near the warmer air. They land silently, tiny and brief. The person watches them for a second, not with fascination, but with quiet awareness. Snow means cold stays present. Snow also means tracks will be visible later. Everything outside leaves marks when the ground is pale and soft. There may be distant animal sounds, not close, not threatening, just part of the landscape. A call carried by wind. A faint, rhythmic movement like hooves crossing packed snow far away. The listener does not chase the sound with excitement. They store it in memory, the way you store a small detail from a dream, because later it might matter, and for now it is only information. Another gentle reminder settles in. You do not need to hold every detail. You can listen as if the wind is doing the thinking for you, while you simply rest. When the hide falls back into place, the shelter immediately feels warmer, not because the outside changed, but because the boundary returned. That boundary is one of the shelter's greatest gifts, by Allah's permission, through careful design and careful habits. The person steps back toward the coals, letting the cold release its grip on their fingertips. The group remains quiet, but a few eyes open fully now. No one asks many questions. A glance toward the entrance can be enough to share the message. The wind is normal, the light is growing, the day seems calm enough. In a small community, communication becomes efficient, not cold, just gentle and minimal. Listening is not only about danger. It is also about timing. If the wind is loud, stepping outside is unpleasant and wasteful. If it is calmer, tasks become easier. Even a simple walk for water or firewood becomes less exhausting when the air is still. The listener waits for a second, then listens again, as if confirming the world is still saying the same thing. Outside, the landscape is wide and spare. Sound travels differently over snow, sometimes carrying far, sometimes swallowed by soft drifts. A distant crack might be ice settling. A faint rolling sound might be snow sliding from a rock face. These are normal in a cold season, ordinary as creaking floors in an old house. The people learn to separate ordinary sounds from unusual ones, and they do it without panic. If you feel yourself getting sleepy, you can let that happen now. The story is staying quiet, and you can keep only one simple anchor, the soft crackle of coals inside, and the soft wind outside. There is a moment when someone leans closer to the wall, pressing an ear near a seam where air sometimes slips through. It is a small habit, like checking a window latch. They listen for a hiss of draft, for the thin whistle that means a gap has opened. If they hear it, they can fix it later with a wedge of stone or an extra strip of hide. Small repairs prevent big discomfort, and comfort arrives only as Allah allows through such ordinary, careful steps. The shelter itself filters the outside world. It turns sharp gusts into dull thumps. It turns distant calls into gentle echoes. It makes the world feel farther away than it truly is, and that distance is soothing. Inside, the group can pretend, for a few minutes, that the cold is not everywhere, even though they know it is. Sometimes a bird passes overhead, quick and small, and its sound is a brief scratch in the air. Sometimes there is no bird at all, only wind and quiet. Either way, the listener accepts it without needing the day to be interesting. Boring is safe. Boring is steady. Steady means people can keep their energy and their patience. Another soft reminder returns, like a blanket being pulled a little higher. You are allowed to listen loosely, to let words pass by, and to keep only the calm feeling of a sheltered space. As the day grows brighter, the outside sounds become slightly clearer. The wind may reveal direction, moving from one side of the shelter to the other. The snow may sparkle in the gap of the doorway, reflecting light without giving warmth. The listener measures these things, then steps back again, choosing warmth over curiosity. Curiosity is fine, but warmth is necessary. The group begins to plan without speaking much. A person might prepare to step out later, not now, just later, when hands are warmer and the light is better. Another person might gather a few items near the entrance, a tool, a small bundle of cord, a strip of hide for covering the face. Preparation is quiet. It does not interrupt the calm. It simply sits beside it. Listening continues even when no one is at the door. People hear changes in the fire sound, and they hear changes in the wind's pressure against the shelter. They learn the shelter's voice. A loose piece of wood taps gently when the wind rises. A hide edge flutters softly when the air shifts. These tiny signals tell the story of the outside without anyone needing to stand in it. If you are still awake, keep one ear on the wind with me, just lightly. Not to worry, only to feel how calm it can be to notice the world and then let it go again. Eventually, the listener returns fully to the center of the shelter, and the outside becomes background again, a wide quiet held at a distance. The coals glow patiently. The air inside remains dim and steady. The day does not demand a dramatic decision. It only offers small information, received calmly, and then set down gently, as the shelter continues to hold its ordinary peace by Allah's permission. Have you ever felt that gentle moment when doing nothing feels like the most sensible thing in the world? When rest itself seems like part of the plan rather than a pause from it? Inside the Ice Age shelter, this is the hour where movement slows even further. The morning has already begun, food has been warmed, the outside has been listened to, and now there is space to simply remain still. No one announces rest. It arrives naturally, like fog settling into a low place. A person eases back down near the fire, choosing a spot where warmth reaches the legs and lower back. They sit, not stiffly, but with the relaxed posture of someone who knows they will not be asked to move quickly. Rest here is not laziness. It is maintenance. Cold drains energy, and energy must be guarded. Another person lies back fully, pulling a hide up over their shoulders, leaving only their face exposed to the warmer air. Their breathing deepens. The shelter accepts this without judgment. In this world, resting when the body asks for it is a form of wisdom learned through experience. The fire supports this quiet pause. It burns low and steady, without bright flames. The sound is soft and repetitive. Crackle, pause, crackle. It becomes easy to match breathing to it. Slow in, slow out, letting the body settle. If your eyelids are heavy, you can let them close. The story is not going anywhere quickly. You can return whenever you want, or simply drift alongside it. An older person shifts slightly, adjusting the hide beneath them to reduce pressure on a sore joint. Age is respected here not with words, but with practical kindness. A younger person might slide a warm stone closer without being asked. No praise follows. This kind of care is normal. The shelter grows quieter, but not empty. Small sounds remain. A soft cough. The faint scrape of a tool being set down carefully. The fire's steady voice. These sounds reassure everyone that life is continuing, even while bodies rest. Rest is also a time for quiet watching. Someone sits with their back against the wall, eyes half open, observing the coals without thinking much about them. This kind of watching is calm and unfocused. It is different from alertness. It is closer to daydreaming. Thoughts drift easily here. A memory of another shelter. A sense of how cold the last storm was. A vague plan for later. Nothing is organized into a list. The mind moves slowly, like a hand trailing through water. Another gentle reminder settles in. You do not need to follow every sentence closely. You can let your attention soften and float, knowing the tone will remain even and calm. Children rest easily in this environment. One curls closer to warmth, thumb tucked under hide. Another leans against a wall, legs stretched out, eyes already closing. They are not told to be still. Stillness comes naturally when the space supports it. The shelter's design encourages this pause. Low ceilings hold warmth. Dim light discourages sudden activity. The narrow entrance keeps the outside world from interrupting. Everything quietly suggests, stay here a little longer. Time passes without being counted. A few minutes, maybe longer. No one checks. In a cold season, rest is productive. It prepares muscles for later effort. It keeps the mind from becoming sharp and restless. It supports survival in a quiet way. The fire is checked without standing up. Someone leans forward slightly, nudges a coal with a stick, then settles back again. The movement is minimal, like adjusting a blanket rather than starting a task. If you find your breathing slowing, that is welcome. You are sharing the same rhythm as this sheltered space, where rest is allowed and even encouraged. Outside, the world continues. Wind moves. Snow shifts. But inside, the shelter holds stillness like a bowl holds water. It does not spill. It does not rush. Another person closes their eyes fully now. Their breathing becomes deeper, more even. Sleep is not a failure here. It is a way of storing energy for later, when the body will need it. Allah allows benefit through this rest, just as through warmth and food. Even those who remain awake feel the pull of calm. Shoulders drop. Hands loosen. The urge to move fades. There is nothing pressing enough to disturb this moment. Another soft anchor returns, like a familiar warmth at your back. The fire is steady. The shelter is quiet. The day is unhurried. When someone finally shifts again, it is slow and deliberate. They stretch slightly, testing muscles without standing. This rest is not endless, but it is respected while it lasts. The shelter does not announce the end of this pause. It simply continues holding warmth and quiet until someone feels ready to rise again. For now, the calm remains, wrapping everyone inside, allowing bodies and minds to sink a little deeper into ease, while the Ice Age morning drifts forward without asking anything more. Have you ever felt how learning becomes easier when it happens quietly, without pressure, like you are simply watching something calm and familiar until your mind starts to understand it on its own? In the Ice Age shelter, teaching does not begin with a lesson title or a speech. It begins with someone doing a task slowly, and someone else sitting close enough to see it. The shelter is warmest near the coals, so that is where the quiet learning often happens, where hands work in steady light, and eyes can follow small movements. A younger person watches an elder prepare a tool. The elder does not perform. They simply work. A stone is turned, examined, and tapped gently. The sound is dry and soft. A flake comes off cleanly. The elder pauses, checks the edge, and continues. The younger person does not ask many questions. They observe, because observation is safer and quieter than talk. If you feel your attention drifting, you can return to one simple image, 2 sets of hands near a low fire, 1 set working, 1 set watching, both moving slowly in the same calm air. The elder's movements are economical. They do not waste energy. They hold the stone at the right angle. They strike with controlled force. They stop when the edge is good enough. This is not art for display. It is craft for survival. And survival prefers calm, repeatable actions. Sometimes the teaching is about hides. The elder shows where to cut, when not to cut. They run a finger along the grain of the hide, showing which direction tears, which direction holds. The younger person touches the same spot afterward, feeling the difference, learning through skin and pressure, not through complicated words. The shelter itself supports this style of learning. It is quiet enough that tiny sounds can be heard. A scrape, a tap, the pull of thread through hide. These sounds become cues. They tell the learner if a movement is smooth or wrong. In a noisy place, those cues disappear. In this dim shelter, they are clear. A bone needle might be passed to the younger person. Not ceremoniously, just handed over. The younger person tries a stitch. The first one is uneven. The elder does not scold. They adjust the angle of the hand, gently, and the next stitch is better. Improvement happens in silence. Another gentle reminder settles in. You do not need to memorize anything here. You can listen as if you are watching a slow, quiet craft video, letting the rhythm soothe you while the meaning arrives softly. The younger person learns where tools belong. A scraper near the wall. A sharp flake in a safe nook. A bundle of cord away from damp air. This is part of education too. Order keeps work calm. Calm keeps mistakes low. And low mistakes keep everyone safer in a hard season. Sometimes the teaching is about fire. The elder points to the ash layer, showing how it protects coals. They show how to push air in gently without scattering embers. The younger person practices with a small stick, moving ash aside carefully, then covering the brighter coals again. The fire responds with a mild glow. Warmth arrives by Allah's permission through this careful knowledge. If the elder steps outside briefly, the younger person watches how they prepare, how they wrap the face, how they check the wind, how they move with caution near the entrance. No one says, "Do it like this." The body learns by copying what works. Learning also includes quiet rules that are never written. Do not waste food. Do not step too close to coals. Do not leave tools where someone can sit on them. Do not open the entrance hide for too long. These habits are taught by small corrections, a hand guiding, a look that says, "Not there." The younger person might practice a simple knot with plant fiber. The elder ties it once, slowly, then again, then places the fiber back in the younger person's hands. The younger person repeats it until the fingers remember. This repetition is calming. It is like counting breaths. Sometimes a story is told, but softly and briefly, not to entertain, but to explain why something matters. A short memory of a storm. A moment when someone lost fire and had to work hard to bring it back. The lesson is practical, and it ends quietly, without drama. Another soft anchor returns, like a familiar warmth. The shelter stays dim. The fire stays low. The teaching stays gentle. You can relax into that consistency. The elder does not claim control over outcomes. They do not speak of objects as if they have power. They treat tools as tools. If something works, it works because Allah allows benefit through correct use and careful effort. That understanding keeps the mind grounded, calm, and humble. The younger person begins to anticipate steps. They reach for the right tool before being asked. They position the hide correctly. They hold the stone at a better angle. The elder notices, not with praise, but with a quiet acceptance, as if to say, "Yes, you are learning." This learning is slow, and that is why it lasts. It does not rely on excitement. It relies on repetition, patience, and daily life. The shelter becomes a classroom without walls, and the day becomes a teacher without words. If you are getting sleepy, this is a good time to let that happen. Imagine the gentle focus of hands, the steady crackle of coals, and the calm space where learning is simply part of resting together. Eventually, the tools are set down. The elder's hands relax. The younger person leans back, satisfied without needing applause. Knowledge has moved quietly from one person to another, like warmth moving through the air, by Allah's permission, through ordinary, careful living. And as this gentle teaching fades, the shelter returns to its simple rhythm, quiet breaths, quiet coals, quiet hands waiting for the next small task, while the Ice Age morning continues, still ordinary, still slow, still softly unfolding. Have you ever felt how evening can begin long before the sun is gone, as if the air itself starts whispering, "Slow down now, prepare gently, and let the day become quiet"? In an Ice Age shelter, night is not a surprise. People do not wait until darkness forces them to act. They begin preparing early, while there is still a little light, because light is useful and cold becomes sharper as the day fades. The first preparation is simple, not dramatic. Someone adds a small piece of fuel to the coals, not to make flames, only to make sure the fire will have strength later. A quiet crackle answers. The glow brightens slightly. It is a small adjustment, like pulling a blanket higher. Another person checks the entrance hide. They press along the edges where drafts sometimes slip in. If a gap is found, it is closed with an extra strip of hide or a small wedge of stone. These are tiny fixes, but they matter. Warmth arrives by Allah's permission through simple means, and those means must be protected. Bedding is arranged with care. The dry grass is fluffed slightly to trap air. Hides are shaken gently to loosen stiffness. The sleeping space is not made pretty. It is made functional, shaped to keep bodies off cold ground and close to shared warmth. If your mind wanders, you can return to one steady image. Hands smoothing a hide. Coals glowing softly. The shelter becoming quieter. one small motion at a time. Tools are gathered and put away. A sharp flake is placed where it cannot be stepped on. A bone needle is returned to its familiar nook. Nothing is left scattered, because night in a cramped shelter is not the time for accidents. Organization becomes a form of comfort. Food is checked as well. Any remaining pieces are placed where they will stay dry. Anything that might attract animals is handled carefully. The shelter must remain calm, and calm includes avoiding problems that disturb sleep. The fire is watched more closely now, not with anxiety, but with steady attention. Someone scrapes ash toward the coals to help them last longer. Another person sets aside a few dry sticks within reach for later. The goal is a fire that can be fed without getting up too much during the coldest hours. The air in the shelter changes as evening approaches. It feels heavier, quieter. Outside sounds become less varied. Wind might steady. Distant movement might fade. Inside, people naturally lower their voices even further, as if the shelter is asking for silence. Another gentle reminder settles in. You do not need to stay alert. You can follow the slow preparations like a lullaby, letting each detail soften you. A child might yawn and curl closer to a familiar person. An older person adjusts their position early, finding a comfortable angle before stiffness settles in. No one waits until discomfort becomes a problem. They know the cold is patient. They respond with patience too. The entrance is opened as little as possible now. If someone must step out, they do it quickly and with preparation, wrapping face and hands, then returning promptly. The shelter's warmth is treated like a shared resource, not to be wasted. Sometimes a simple windbreak outside the entrance is checked. A loose stone is repositioned. A hide flap is weighted down. These actions are small, but they reduce the pressure of wind and reduce the work the fire must do to keep the shelter livable. Inside, the dimness deepens. Light is no longer grey. It becomes a softer darkness, warmed by the fire's orange glow. Shadows grow longer along the walls. Soot marks above the hearth become less visible. Everything becomes simpler to look at, and that simplicity encourages rest. If you feel sleepy, you can let that feeling spread now. Imagine the fire's glow reaching your hands, your shoulders, your chest, by Allah's permission, through warmth that is carefully maintained. People settle into their usual sleeping arrangement, not random, but patterned. The ones who need warmth most are closer to the center. Those who can tolerate the edge sleep slightly farther out. The arrangement is practical, shaped by experience and quiet care. There is a final, gentle check of the shelter. A look at the roof seams. A touch to confirm the entrance hide hangs properly. A glance at the tinder bundle to ensure it is dry. These checks are calm, almost automatic, like brushing teeth in a modern home, not exciting, but reassuring. The fire is reduced to the right strength. Not too large, so it does not waste fuel and smoke the shelter. Not too small, so it does not fade. Someone knows the balance by feeling and memory, by the color of coals and the sound of crackle. Another soft anchor returns, like a familiar phrase you do not need to repeat out loud. This is only preparation, and it remains gentle. Nothing sudden is coming. The night will arrive slowly, and the shelter will hold. As bodies lie down, voices fade until there are no words at all. A last piece of hide is pulled over shoulders. A head rests on a folded bundle. Breathing begins to synchronize in the quiet way that happens when people share a small space. Outside, darkness spreads over snow, but inside, the fire keeps a small circle of light. It is not eternal. Only Allah is eternal. But for tonight, for these hours, it is enough, and that enoughness is soothing. And as the shelter becomes still, the preparations dissolve into silence. The day does not end with a strong conclusion. It simply softens, slows, and fades, until the only sounds left are the gentle coals and the steady breathing of people resting, while the cold world outside continues quietly on its own. Have you ever noticed how some days do not end with a clear line, but instead dissolve into quiet, until you can barely tell where waking life stops and sleep begins. In this Ice Age shelter, the night does not arrive like a door slamming. It arrives like a slow dimming, a gentle thickening of darkness at the edges of the room. The fire remains, low and steady, not as a grand flame, but as a careful glow that asks for nothing except attention. Someone stirs once, lightly, adjusting a hide near the shoulder. The movement is small, almost automatic. Then stillness returns. The shelter has a way of absorbing motion and returning it to calm, like a soft surface that does not echo. The air is warmer near the hearth and cooler near the walls. People sleep in practice positions, not random. They have learned, through many nights, where warmth lingers. They place themselves accordingly, without discussion, as naturally as you might pull your blanket toward your chest. If your mind drifts, you can return to one simple anchor: the quiet crackle of coals. Not loud, not bright, just steady. A sound that holds the night together. The fire is not worshipped. It is respected as a means. Any comfort it provides is only by Allah's permission, through ordinary materials and ordinary care. This understanding keeps the shelter humble and keeps the minds inside it calm. Outside, the cold presses in from every direction. Snow reflects faint starlight. Wind moves gently across open land. Sometimes there is a distant shift of ice, a low groan that feels like the earth settling. Inside, these sounds are softened, filtered through hide and stone, turned into something less sharp. Breathing becomes the main rhythm. One person exhales slowly, another breathes shallowly, another has a deeper pattern like waves. The shelter is small, but this shared rhythm makes it feel steady. It is not a perfect comfort. It is simply enough for tonight. Another gentle reminder returns like a familiar warmth. You do not need to stay focused. You can let the words fade behind your own breathing and keep only the calm sense of a protected space. At some point, someone wakes briefly, not fully, just enough to check the fire with half-open eyes. They may reach out with a stick, nudge ash over a glowing spot, then settle back. The action is quiet and practiced, like turning over in bed. The coals are protected for the next hours. The night is also a time when worries, if they come, are kept small. People do not plan far ahead in the dark. They do not create complicated futures. They stay with what is real: warmth, shelter, breath, the simple fact of being alive through Allah's will. In the dim glow, the shelter's surfaces look softer. Soot-dark stone becomes almost smooth in the low light. The edges of tools disappear into shadow. Even the entrance looks less like a boundary and more like a quiet fold in the darkness. If you imagine the scene closely, you may notice how little is actually happening and how soothing that can be. No announcements, no music, no bright images, just a slow, safe sameness. The cold outside continues to exist, but it does not dominate this moment. The shelter holds. The fire holds. People hold their warmth close. That is the entire story of the night, and it does not need embellishment. Another soft anchor returns, as gently as a hand resting on a shoulder. The night is steady. The coals are steady. Your breathing can be steady too. Hours pass without being counted. Time is not a number here. It is a feeling of deeper darkness than the slightest return of pale light. But we do not rush toward morning. We remain with the quiet middle of the night, where everything is simplest. The shelter carries small signs of life even in sleep. A foot shifts. A hand relaxes. Someone murmurs a sound that is not a word. Then silence returns. The fire answers with a soft crackle, like it is confirming, "Yes, I am still here." Nothing in this moment is eternal. Only Allah is eternal. The fire will fade if untended. The shelter will one day be abandoned. The season will change. But for this night, this small circle of warmth exists, and it is enough for resting bodies and quiet minds. If you are still awake, you can let yourself soften further. If you are already half asleep, that is perfect. The story does not require you to finish it with your full attention. It is meant to accompany you gently toward rest. And now, as this quiet day completes itself, there is no dramatic closing scene. The Ice Age shelter remains still, the coals continue their patient glow, and the outside world stays cold and wide, while those inside sleep in simple safety by Allah's permission. As we leave this shelter in our imagination, let it leave you with a calm reflection. Even in harsh conditions, life could be gentle in its rhythms, and ordinary moments could hold peace. Thank you for listening to this story. I'm grateful you spent this quiet time here with me, and I hope your night continues softly, with restful sleep and an easy heart.